In this video, we'll be discussing what is the doctrine of basic structure, how it has evolved, what are its features, what is the criticism that has been leveled against this doctrine, what is the significance of the basic structure, and so on. In simple words, the doctrine of basic structure means that there are certain features and certain aspects of the Indian Constitution which are not amendable. These cannot be altered and these cannot be removed from the Indian Constitution. Some of the components of the basic structure are secularism, rule of law, democracy, parliamentary form of government, and so on. The point is, if you remove these features out of the Indian Constitution, then rest of the provisions and rest of the schedules and articles and amendments of the Constitution do not make any sense. Take the example of, say, democracy, which is the component of the basic structure of the Indian Constitution. If democracy is removed from the Indian Constitution, then all the fundamental rights, directive principles, and all other provisions of the Constitution do not make any sense. So this is the significance of the doctrine of basic structure. The doctrine of the basic structure is the result of the tussle between the judiciary and the legislature. There has been a chronology of the events in the past and through which this doctrine of basic structure has evolved. Let us have a look at these events. Soon after the independence, the parliament declared that right to property is no more a fundamental right. In the Shankari Prasad case 1951, the judiciary said that the parliament can amend the fundamental rights under the Article 368 of the Indian Constitution and it can amend and take away the fundamental rights. Later on, in the Golaknath case 1967, the Supreme Court reversed its verdict which was given in the Shankari Prasad case. The Supreme Court said that the fundamental rights are not amendable, the parliament cannot take away the fundamental rights, the fundamental rights have a divine status and so the parliament cannot take away the fundamental rights. Later on, the parliament brought in the 24th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1971, which said that the parliament can amend any of the provisions of the Constitution. Subsequently, in the famous Keswananda Bharati case 1973, the Supreme Court for the first time gave the doctrine of basic structure. The words basic structure were used by the Supreme Court for the first time in the Keswananda Bharati case 1973. In this case, the Supreme Court said that the parliament can amend the fundamental rights, the parliament can amend any and every provision of the Constitution, but it cannot alter and the parliament cannot destroy the basic structure of the Indian Constitution. Through this 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, the Parliament amended preamble, it amended the directive principles, it introduced fundamental duties, and it introduced a lot of provisions. The crux of the 42nd Amendment Act was that the Parliament gained unlimited power to amend the Constitution. Subsequently, in the Minerva Mills case 1980, the Supreme Court said that judicial review applies to the acts of the Parliament. In this case, the Supreme Court also upheld the doctrine of basic structure. Later on, in the Vaman Rao case 1981, the Apex Court upheld the doctrine of basic structure. The Apex Court held that the basic structure applies to the Constitutional Amendment Acts which were passed after the Keswananda Bharati case 1973. So this is how the doctrine of basic structure has evolved. The judiciary, through several cases, have identified the components of the basic structure. These include rule of law, secularism, democracy, judicial review, federalism, parliamentary form of government, and so on. There has been a lot of credible criticism that has been leveled against this doctrine of basic structure. It is said that the doctrine hampers the balance of power in favor of judiciary. It is also said that the doctrine of basic structure is a manifestation of what is called as the judicial overreach. We all know that just like there is a balance of power, there is also the division of power, wherein the executive is supposed to execute the laws made by the parliament is supposed to make the laws, while the judiciary is supposed to be the dispute settlement wing. But because of the doctrine of basic structure, the judiciary has infringed upon the functions of the parliament. The judiciary has gone beyond its normal functions of dispute settlement and it is now dictating to the parliament what it can amend and what it cannot amend as far as the constitution is concerned. Also, it is said that the basic structure is not an exhaustive list of components. The judiciary, through several verdicts and several cases, is identifying new components of the basic structure. There is a very credible criticism that is leveled against the doctrine of basic structure. It is said that the judiciary did not have a consensus within itself while it gave the doctrine of basic structure. The basic structure was given by the judiciary for the first time in the famous case 1 in the Bharti case. This case was decided by a bench of 13 judges, and the doctrine of basic structure was given by a 7:6 majority. That is, 7 judges were in favor of giving the doctrine of basic structure, while 6 judges gave a dissenting opinion. So it is said that the doctrine of basic structure did not command the consensus within the judiciary itself. No matter what criticism has been leveled against the doctrine of basic structure, the basic structure happens to be a very significant and a very important feature of the Indian Constitution. Let us have a look at the significance of this doctrine. The doctrine of basic structure has made Parliament a more responsible and a more mature lawmaking body. The Parliament has internalized this doctrine of basic structure. Now the government knows that even if it commands an absolute majority in the Parliament, it cannot pass any acts and it cannot introduce any bills that could potentially violate the doctrine of basic structure, as the government knows that any such potential bills that would violate the doctrine of basic structure would be declared invalid and void by the judiciary. So in a way, we can say that the doctrine of basic structure has made the government as well as the Parliament more responsible and mature in their functioning. Also, through the doctrine of basic structure, the judiciary has been able to act as a true custodian and protector of the Indian Constitution. We all know that there is a very happy synthesis of parliamentary sovereignty and judicial supremacy in the Indian Constitution. It is one of the important features of the Indian Constitution. The doctrine of basic structure proves this feature of the Indian Constitution. So to summarize the discussion, we can say that through the doctrine of basic structure, the judiciary has been able to impose reasonable restrictions on the amending power of the Indian Parliament. In conclusion, we can say that the Parliament cannot amend the basic structure of the Indian Constitution, as the will of the Constituent Assembly is reflected and contained in the basic structure of the Constitution. And therefore, the Parliament will always be subordinate to the will of the Constituent Assembly, and so the Parliament cannot alter and destroy the basic structure of Indian Constitution. So with this, we conclude the topic of the doctrine of basic structure. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you so much.